Chair. This past week, Paper Excellence admitted to European anti-monopoly regulators that, in fact, they are Asia Pulp and Paper. There was a huge public track record identifying the connection between Paper Excellence, Asia Pulp and Paper, and CNR Mas from Shanghai. And yet your officials, your government, came and told us that you couldn't find any connection whatsoever. So did they just play you guys for suckers?
I guess I'm curious, Mr. Chair, what this has to do with the SUPS B in Natural Resources Canada. The purview, as you will know, Mr. Angus, for the review of foreign investments actually lies with the Minister of Innovation, Science and Industry. And I understand that you are interested in having him come and answer your question, so I encourage you to do that.
Fine. So did you provide any warnings or advice to the Minister of Innovation, being that your responsibility is natural resources?
When an Investment Canada review is actually ongoing, it has nothing to do with Natural Resources Canada.
It doesn't, okay. So, I mean, corporate reputation is everything, especially in forestry. Asia Pulp and Paper had a notorious track record. They launched one of the most intensive burnings in forests of peatlands in Indonesian history that released 1.75 billion tons of carbon dioxide in just a few months. When they took over Northern Pulp and Paper in Pictou, their emissions surpassed the threshold by 100,000%. Did your department track this company at all?
As I say...
We have a point of order. If I could ask you to hold, Minister Wilkinson. Go ahead, Mr. Bruson.
I know that it's kind of loose on this piece, but if perhaps Mr. Angus can help us tie that to the SUPS B, that would be helpful.
Thank you for your point of order. I was just, Mr. Angus, on the questioning, we give it quite a bit of latitude, but if you could tie it to the conversation at hand being the supplementary estimates. So I'll let Minister Wilkinson was about to answer, and then you can continue on. Go ahead, Mr.
Thank you.
As I say, certainly some of the information that you and is in the public media in terms of the behavior of this particular company is concerning. But I would say the government, through the Investment Canada review, obtained a number of different commitments on the part of the company before any decision was made on the basis of a net benefit to Canada. Of course, the government will monitor and is monitoring those kinds of conditions that were actually imposed on the company. But I would say, in terms of a detailed response with respect to a lot of these issues, I encourage you to invite the Minister of Innovation to come and answer your questions.
We will be. The issue, I guess, is whether or not there was any responsibility for natural resources to look after our forests when we gave it to such corporate bandits. So we had a former manager at APP Shanghai offices speaking to Canadian media that the whole intention of Asia Pulp and Paper taking control of Domtar and Resolute was that, quote, it's a fiber grab. They want to keep the perception that Paper Excellence is an asset of Canada, for Canada, and by Canada. But in reality, it's a feeder for the Chinese machine. Are you looking into whether or not our mills and our forests are being used by Asia Pulp and Paper as a feeder for the Chinese machine?
As I say, as part of any Investment Canada review, there is an ongoing monitoring of the behavior and the commitments the company has, and I encourage you to have that conversation with the Minister of Science and Innovation. So I also would raise the question, though, again to the Chair, what does this have to do with SUPS B?
Well, what does it have to do with your department to look after our forests? I guess that's my question.
I think I was invited to be here to actually talk about SUPS B, and normally you talk about what it is that you actually were invited to come, Mr. Angus, and I'm not sure how this relates to that at all.
Okay. Well, we had the problem, you see, Mr. Wijawa, Jackson Wijawa, refused to testify before our committee. I mean, that's unprecedented when someone just says, no, I don't care what you think. And yet he's controlling 22 million hectares of forest. Now, you're probably smarter in math than I am, but that's bigger than the size of Nova Scotia. When Premier McNeil in Nova Scotia went to meet with Mr. Wijawa, he went to Shanghai, to the CNR Mas building. We've been told that Mr. Wijawa's office is in the headquarters of APP at the White Magnolia Plaza, which is also known as CNR Mas Plaza in Shanghai. Could you tell us where Mr. Wijawa is?
I don't know Mr. Wijawa, and I don't know where his office is, so I would have a hard time giving you a sense of that.
Well, I guess I'm just concerned because...
So, Mr. Angus, I just want to pause once again. As a reminder, if we could tie it to the supplementary estimates, you do have a significant amount of latitude to work within. But because the minister is here on the supplementary estimates, and you're free to ask your questioning as you wish, but to tie it back to the conversation at hand today. I'm sure you can find a way to do all of that. Thank you.
Oh, I absolutely. I know this is uncomfortable that we gave 22 million hectares of Canadian forest to a company with such a track record, and we are going to have to plant all these, 2 billion trees to cover all the damage? But I just want to follow up that Mac Anderson, who worked at Mackenzie Fibre, testified to the BC legislature that Paper Excellence was owned by Sinar Mas, which your government denied. And then he said the, quote, guys at Shanghai were reviewing what I was doing. So if this is a Canadian company in the Canadian interest, operating and looking after our Canadian forests, are you concerned at all, or are you looking into the fact that our forests are being directed by the guys in Shanghai?
Point of order from Mr. Bruson. Mr. Bruson on the point of order.
I just feel like we keep on going to the same point, and I still haven't received an answer about how this ties to the SUPSB. And I know that Mr. Angus has brought a motion to have Mr. Jay come. And so, that may present an opportunity for us to get a lot of these answers, but this doesn't tie to the SUPSB as far as I can tell, and we've tried a few times to ask for even just a slight hook into them. So perhaps if Mr. Angus can help with that, that would be helpful.
Well, I absolutely would. I would love to have the Paper Excellence study, but my colleagues and the Liberals are filibustering it, so we can't ask these questions. So the only chance I might get is the minister in charge of Canada's forests. So I guess I'm concerned that that this is being controlled from Shanghai. I know the workers are concerned. We have some great mills that we want to protect and we want investment in. So I'll just ask on a simple question: is your department concerned that decisions about Canadian forests are being directed out of Shanghai?
Again, the Investment Canada review, which looks at all.
I still haven't gotten that slight hook into the SUPSB. It's pretty light.
Truth hurts. Truth hurts. I'm respectful. She can interrupt me all
thank
she
you,
wants,
Mr.
but it's
Bruson,
a
on the
simple
point
question.
of order. Mr. Angus, I'm going to turn it back over to you. You're an experienced parliamentarian. You have 15 seconds or so, so I'm going to let you ask your question and let Mr.
It's the only question I wanted to ask. Are you and is your department concerned whether or not our forests are being controlled out of Shanghai? Simple question.
As I say, the review of foreign investment goes through the Investment Canada Act, and the requirement to ensure that all of the obligations and the commitments through that process, once one is approved, rests with the Minister of Industry. I would suggest that you actually invite him to have that conversation. And I would also actually suggest that you have a conversation with one of your friends, Doug Ford, who actually is responsible for the management of the forests. If you know anything about the constitutional jurisdiction here, Charlie, the province is actually.
I'm glad you're bringing up Doug Ford, but I wanted to know if you were concerned. I'll call Doug and I'll check in and see what Doug has to say, but I was hoping that you were concerned.
Thank you, Mr. Angus, for your questioning. We unfortunately